Yes, you read the title right, and no, I don't feel bad about it. I've been playing for a decade, and yet I still haven't experienced FF14's story. I have terminal skipping disorder. But why did I skip in the first place? How did I never feel the need to go back and catch up? Let's talk about this and a whole lot more. So I started the game with the exact same mentality that the vast majority of players did. I wanted to take my time, attempted to allow myself to be immersed in the world and let the opening acts wash over me. I had first begun the game at the insistence of a friend. He had been playing for a few months and had the time of his life, and he wanted me to join in with him and our mutual buddy and put together a group to attempt the then current second coil of Bahamut. My first raiding experience outside of Destiny sounded like a good laugh, so I didn't need much convincing. But once I subscribed, I quickly realised that until I hit level 50 and could join in, for all intents and purposes, I was on my own. Despite that, I remained steadfast in my decision to take my time and get the full Final Fantasy XIV experience. For as long as I could, at least. As it turns out, A Realm Reborn is pretty slow paced, isn't it? In today's context, where the overarching plot is a creaking behemoth spanning 5 additional expansions, it feels fitting that the opening act is primarily comprised of world building and character introductions. But when that's all there is, and you are 10 long-winded quests deep into a riveting arc about delivering wine, it can be hard to maintain attentiveness. You also have to bear in mind that this is old A Realm Reborn we're talking about. Before they reworked it and carved out most of the meaningless fluff, my interest waned, and instead of taking a break, or what was more likely to occur, just dropping the game entirely, I forced myself to continue. The carrot on a stick of playing with my friends was just tantalising enough to hold on to me. Every couple of days, my buddy would ask, "How far have I gotten?" And it was tough to respond with enthusiasm thanks to my level 30 experience feeling just as sluggish as my level 5 one. I was questing, MSQ was taking ages, and I wasn't really feeling it. So I came to a crossroads. I could either continue forcing myself to watch the cutscenes whilst only half listening just to be able to say that yes, indeed, I did watch the story, technically, or I could skip some cutscenes here and there, making ground towards the endgame, the thing I was actually interested in, much more quickly. Ironically, by the time I eventually capped out, my friends had lost interest and unsubscribed. I made a promise to myself that one day I'd catch up. When the next expansion came, I would surely catch up and give it a proper shot again. But I never did. As patches released, I would log in and excitedly skip through the cutscenes to unlock the tantalising morsel of new content hidden within. When Heavensward came out, I tried again, but once more, it didn't stick. The Dragonsong War was enough to pique my interest, but without that foundational knowledge from the base game, it was difficult to feel any connection to the Scions or feel remotely invested in the stakes that were being set up. And to this day, that same pattern has stuck. It's not that I don't enjoy JRPGs, slow burn stories, or fantasies. On paper, FF14 is literally a perfect match for what I enjoy in a video game. I devour slow-paced books that focus on building a believable, interesting world. JRPGs are probably my favourite genre, and yet, the persistent thought I have about Eorzea's tale is that I can't get into it. I know there's something special there. Random lore tidbits I consume via osmosis just sound so intriguing. They paint the picture of a world I want to understand and appreciate. It's just been so impenetrable for me. Speaking of osmosis, obviously if you spend a lot of time integrated into a game's community, you'll pick up some knowledge here and there. It's not like I'm completely blind to many of the common complaints or commendations the story receives, and through playing the content itself, you can usually infer some level of basic understanding. Like, I know that in A Realm Reborn, we are a new adventurer with a very special form of tinnitus that leads us on to defeat Ifrit, Titan, and Garuda in sequence. We synthesize a buffet with the worst effort to payoff ratio in human history, and we beat that guy who definitely didn't have any bad intentions. Then we celebrate and ride off into the sunset, I'm assuming. 5 patches of definitely not forced side stories in order to include additional primals as bosses later, and we have the infamous 2-hour cutscene that acts as a bridge into Heavensward. The Queen Lalafell of Uldar drops a very important goblet and dies, but not actually. Raobarn loses an arm in a method that I assume is somewhat related to that, and the sloppy guy is here too. All of that must have been fairly emotionally draining, so we ran off for a nice little getaway in Ishgard. We take a trip to see the sights with a dragon killer, a dragon fucker, and our annoying little cousin in tow, and whilst I'm sure it's a lovely, emotional little character study, all I really remember are those Vath quests that would make you lug around one pot across the entirety of the Duranian Forelands for 5 minutes straight. We beat up a couple of dragons, much to the chagrin or elation of our more dragonically inclined party members, and the Heavensward was in it, so we can all go, oh my god, they said the line! Moving into Stormblood, after Heavensward being so critically acclaimed, the team at Square Enix took a different approach, pissing everybody off. I don't know what happened with that story, aside from we got to go to some fairly lovely locales and we were introduced to Big Booty Xenos. But what I do know is that players were not satisfied with the plot at the time, by and large. People warmed to it, given time, and I think on launch opinions were strained partially thanks to us needing to literally wait in queue in-game for hours on end to even progress. In Shadowbringers, the Scions are one by one teleported to Eorzea but evil, and we at last meet our number one fan, even though it actually turns out he was one of the most forgettable NPCs from times gone by all along, and we've met him before. We meet a stupid sexy Garlean grandad who ends up actually being Hades for some reason. Makes sense though, I guess, considering that he hails from alt-world underwater New York. They're equally as dystopian as one another, so I suppose that makes sense. In Endwalker, it turns out that all of the world's pain and suffering for millennia were directly caused by some bird girl that was introduced into the story mere hours before the end with almost no foreshadowing, and no, they're never going to add a bird race for player characters regardless of how much you ask nicely. Also, we had that duel right at the end, which was, admittedly, really damn cool. And in Dawntrail, I don't even know, really, aside from the fact that in terms of reception, it seems to be Stormblood 2. Hopefully that means we get to fight God Kefka again next patch, because my lord, I could use another one of those. But do I feel like I'm missing out? Not really, honestly. I get a fulfilling FF14 experience. I love raiding with my buds. I always look forward to a new Savage or Ultimate progression, and when more casual content releases, like field explorations or deep dungeons, I'll dive into those as well and have a fantastic time. Even without the story being a draw, there are no lack of reasons to log into and enjoy the game. I've enjoyed my stay for over a decade at this point. Obviously, there are lulls, and when that happens, I'll fill my time with exploring different facets within the game, or I'll just raid log until the next patch. I'm happy. One opinion I've heard parroted a number of times in many different contexts, both to me and in general discussion, is the idea that there is a quote-unquote correct way to prioritize your experience with the game, and that this correct way is to focus on the story. 80% of the game is the MSQ. This game is only worth playing for the story. Yoshi P says that the story is the most important part of the game. These are all direct quotes I've been told before. I don't agree, because FF14 is a very compelling game to play outside of the story. The jobs, for the most part, feel satisfying to master, and the raid encounters are by and large excellent. The MMO has a deep housing system, lots of supplementary gameplay with each patch to sink time into, and a passionate and active community to integrate with should you want to. It shouldn't come as a surprise that any of those, or even a mixture, or the other 20 things I never mentioned, can be enough of a draw for a subset of people that they can enjoy them as their main staple, their reason to play. Just as many come to experience the twists and turns of the narrative each patch, many too play to raid, or socialise, or create glamours. There is no best reason to play the game, because applying odd purity tests to which facets are most deserving of providing enjoyment is weird when they're all coexisting components of a singular overall package. I think the best way to enjoy FF14 is whichever way you enjoy it best. With all that said, I came to a decision recently. I do want to see if that MSQ is all it's cracked up to be, and at last I feel like I have the will to give it a real shot. So I will. By the time this video releases, I will have started even. I'll stream it also if you want to watch along on either Twitch or YouTube. You're more than welcome to. I know it's going to take a long time, but I hope that I can learn to love this part of the game too. I hope that it sparks interesting discussions with friends and those in chat, and that maybe it'll be something to talk about in a future video. We'll see. And maybe, if you're somebody that has always enjoyed one aspect of the game, if you feel up to it, have a try at branching out as well. I would love for you to tell me all about how your attempts at doing so go. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day.